What's up, YouTube? Today we're coming right back at you with another video. Today we're going to specifically be talking about how to recognize pitching out of sidearm angles. Now, this type of pitcher covers both Randy Johnson, Darren O'Day, Sergio Romo. There's a lot of names out there that throw sidearm that these would apply to. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on Randy Johnson. He's the menace that everybody hates, but there's a couple pitches that he doesn't throw that you should know as well, but we'll touch on that later in this video. Ultimately, though, there are some tells to his pitches that you know they're on the way, but keep in mind these tells are hard to notice at first, so this does take a lot of practice to know what exactly he is throwing out of the hand. Please be sure to keep in mind at the end of this video, I am going to be overlaying all of his pitches at the same exact time, so you will be able to see what he's throwing based on that screenshot. But with that being said, let's get right into this video. Please be sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment on the video about how much this new Randy has been terrorizing your life. Please be sure to leave a sub on the channel as well. There's a lot more content coming your way, but let's get right into the video. So for this, I'm going to show you how to do this in custom practice. I've kind of tweaked my Randy out so you can see what he throws. But with that being said, let's take a look at a four-seam fastball. So as you can see, his fastball is pretty straightforward. There's really no serious tells to it, but it's pretty much just a pretty solid dart across the strike zone, whether it's either high and in, low and away, whatever the case might be. It's a pretty straight pitch. And anytime you see him throwing a straight pitch like this, you could pretty much bank on it, whether it being a four-seam or a two-seam fastball. Now, I'm not really going to touch on that two-seam fastball because really, it's nothing special. It doesn't break that much. It's essentially the four-seam fastball, but it's a little bit slower. It might be enough to get you off guard, but let's be honest, you're probably going to be late on that fastball anyway. At least I normally am. So that two-seam, it kind of times me up right there. I end up hitting it anyway, so it really never gets thrown. But specifically on the inside pitch, again, you can see it come across his body. If you look for that velocity, especially on the outlier four-seam fastball, you will be able to tell it's coming in quick. And let's be real, you should be sitting fastball. If you're facing a guy like Randy Johnson, or any other flamethrower in this game, you need to be sitting the best fastball that he has, or else you will literally never be able to hit it. If there's one pitch you should be able to hit off of Randy Johnson, it should be his fastball. So the next pitch we're going to be talking about is the slider. Now, like the slider that I talked about in the other video about how to recognize pitches, it has the same tell as any other pitcher in this game with a regular animation. The ball will start away from his hand and then break his way back into the strike zone. The only thing that might be a little bit tricky to see with the slider is on an inside pitch. However, that inside pitch, you can see the seams on the baseball when it spins. So that is something to look for when you're looking to find a slider. So I'm starting here with all inside zones. As you can see, when he throws it, the ball starts almost about a quarter inch away from his hand, and it finds its way back across the strike zone to land for a strike. Now, this is specifically in the inside pitch zones. This is normally going to be the hardest spot to recognize, hey, this is a slider. Especially for me personally, I like to throw that back knee slider, low and in. This is the type of pitch that is a strikeout pitch. So being able to recognize, hey, this guy's about to throw me an inside slider, and you do see that it is an inside slider, you're going to do a lot of damage swinging like this. Similarly, the low and away slider, it's another really effective pitch that people like to use in this game. As you can see, it really starts outside of the zone, starts away from his hand, and breaks right back in. That pitch almost looks straight from a guy like Randy. Now, that can be a little bit confusing because sometimes that does kind of look like a fastball or maybe even a splitter. However, a splitter and a slider on Randy is about the same speed, so you should be able to time those up no matter what. But speaking of the splitter, let's go take a look at it. So specifically here, we are only going to be talking about the low splitter. The reason why I say the low splitter is because the belt high and the high splitter looks exactly like a fastball, or almost exactly like a fastball, except it's just going to be a lot slower. So Randy's splitter tops at about 87, 88. It's going to be just slower than that slider. So even, like I said, on that low and away corner, it might look like a splitter. It might look like a slider. Worst case scenario, your PCI is there. You know it's there. And you just foul it off because your timing's a little weird. Now, that being said, this splitter is fantastic, especially on the new 99 Randy. Being able to recognize that it's coming is important because this is a very good strikeout pitch, especially the low in, low and away. As you can see with the splitter, almost like other changeups, the ball starts to rise a little bit and then it drops. So watch, when he comes out of his hand, it goes up a little bit and then it falls back down. Being able to recognize that is going to absolutely tell, hey, a splitter is on its way. Now, again, the speed difference can kind of throw you off. But if you see that little dip up and then it goes straight down after that, about halfway, you'll be able to get to that ball, time it up, and hit it very hard. Now, the last pitch for Randy Johnson is his slurve. Now, his slurve is going to move a lot like his slider. However, this pitch is going to be a lot slower, and you're going to see that it's almost going to kind of hold in the air a little bit and then break. So as you can see, we'll have him throw it here. He throws it. It kind of holds there for a second, and then it comes to break back into the zone. So let's see it on an inside slurve here. You see it kind of hold, and then it breaks sharply across. The slider does not hold, it just cuts across, where the slurve, because of its speed, because it's only 80 miles an hour, it will hold a little bit, almost like a curveball, but then it'll break like a slider. So that is a really good tell, especially with Randy. His control on this pitch is very bad. So there's a pretty solid chance that he's going to end up hanging this, and you could absolutely smash it if you could tell what pitch is coming. So the last pitch we're going to be talking about here is the sinker. Obviously, we couldn't do Randy Johnson with that because he doesn't throw a sinker, thank God. But Steve Cishek is an old guy that we had in this game that honestly still could probably be used. You might still see him, but really just for the sake of covering all of the spots on this video, it is good to know when that sinker is being thrown. There really is no crazy tell to this sinker, at least out of the hand, but you are able to see that break as the pitch is coming into the zone. It looks almost like a four-seam out of the hand, straight dart, but about a halfway, maybe a little bit more halfway, you'll see it start to break in towards Frank Thomas here, and then you'll be able to hit the ball and recognize that. A lot of times you see guys throw a sinker like this, but it's 94, maybe a little bit less. A lot of times those pitchers are actually kind of easy to hit just because the velocity isn't there. Luckily, we don't have a sidewinder type pitcher like Steve Cishek that throws the sinker like 102, because let's be honest, that card would be disgusting. Ultimately, though, the sinker really has nothing to it. As you see there, it's kind of straight out of the hand, and then you just see it start to bend back towards you. If it's a lefty and you have a righty at the plate, it'll break away from him. But the sinker in this game really has not been what it was last year, thank God, because it was really strong. But this is a pitch that is good to know, just in case you're running into a BR situation or an event situation where you have a sidearm guy who is able to throw that sinker. So what I have here is the overlay of where each pitch starts. I'm going to break it down a little bit more later on, but this is where the pitches start for Randy. There's only 3 pitches because the 4-seam and the 2-seam start in the same spots, and then the slider and the slurve also start in the same spot. So there's 3 pitches here. There's the splitter, the slider, and then the 4-seam fastball. As you can see, like I said earlier, the splitter starts high. So as you can see, these 3 pitches are going to the exact same spot, or at least a very similar spot, and the splitter is starting out at the highest point of any of his pitches. This is consistent with like any other sort of changeup or anything along those lines, where the ball will rise first and then dive down about halfway to the strike zone. Below that, directly below that, is going to be the slider. That's, again, the slider starts a little bit high. It moves away from his hand and then breaks across the plate. And then the fastball is actually a lot lower than I thought it would be myself. But you could see where that fastball, if you could memorize these pitch locations, especially, try to do it on the stadium that you play at most frequently and where the batter's eye is, if I'm looking in this spot where the splitter is, the slider / slurve is, and then the fastballs are, I'd be able to tell just out of where his arm slot is where that ball is going to go, which could be a major advantage. Let's take a look at what it does after this point, though. So right before we get to the strike zone, you see here that there is a distinct difference in the pitch, not only just where the location is, but also where the speed is as well. Obviously, the fastball is leading the pack, being the closest to the zone. It's going to be the lowest at this point. Also, right above it, you have the slider, and then above that, again, is the splitter. Being able to recognize that pitch, and especially if you're seeing it at this point, if that ball, that splitter is still that high, you're going to be able to see it from very far away. Also, take a notice at what the orientation of the baseball looks like. The seams of the baseball do matter. Look at the fastball. That is how a fastball actually does look when it's thrown in real life. Slider, same thing. Splitter, similar situation. Those balls will spin, and you can actually see the seams of these pitches. So that is another thing to look out for. But again, if you see the horseshoe of the baseball in a vertical direction, that's going to be a fastball. If you see it in kind of like a slider motion or a moving to the left and or right, depending on the handedness of the pitcher, that's going to be a slurve or a slider type spin. And then you see if the horseshoe is on its side but is tumbling in a downward direction, that's going to be the splitter. Let's take a look at what this entire setup looks. No audio. Let's just take a look at what it looks like in slow motion with all of the pitches on top of each other. But y'all, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for sticking around and watching it. I hope these tips help you because the new Randy is an absolute menace in this game. And these tips are going to be a really good way to make solid contact on him and hopefully get a couple wins from him. Please be sure to leave a like on this video and put in these comments if these tips helped you. I've got a lot more instructional stuff coming your way. Please be sure to sub to the channel. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch y'all later.